All right, I am joined by Ron Segev, founding partner of Segev LLP, one of the sponsors of the Starties networking party on March 9th in New York City. Ron, always great to see you. Thank you so much for yours and the firm's support of our event. Quickly introduce yourself here, introduce the firm, and tell us a little bit about maybe some of the work you've done for some of the earlier stage companies in the space.
I appreciate the opportunity of being on the show here. This is great, and always a pleasure to support all the good work you're doing in the ecosystem. So Segev LLP is a full-service business law firm. We've been around for 10 years. The thesis when we started this enterprise was to create a full business solutions law firm, purpose-built for the gaming and betting space. And since then, we've grown to a team of about 50 people with offices across Canada. We have an office in the US. And in the growth and emerging space, we worked with everyone from, I'd like to say founders to Fortune 500, but in the growth and emerging, anywhere from ideation to series. We also do go public work. So we've seen startups go from ideation to series to go public, and we've assisted with that. And the type of work we do is really all encompassing. I tell my clients I'll do anything within law and reason to get a successful outcome for you.
All right, Ron. Well, look, you have a large body of work supporting founders and growth stage companies over the last 10 years. The firm has been around. And look, now more than ever, there seems to be more and more entrepreneurs coming into the space, looking to capture opportunities that are opening up. As you look across the entire industry ecosystem right now, what are some broad trends you're seeing based on all the firm your work is doing right now? Anything stand out to you as trends you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I suspect your viewers are expecting me to jump into the AI, so let me just get it over and done with. I think AI is probably one of the greatest drivers of trends we're seeing going forward, particularly the effect that it's having on fundraising strategy for emerging companies. So, back in the old days, a year ago, it was really expensive for founders to go out and hire developers, code out platforms and technology. Today, that's changed considerably. Coding tools are a lot more accessible. They're cheaper. Vibe coding is a thing now. And so founders should be thinking about their financing in different ways. So again, from the old days, you'd have to go out and raise money to build a product and then take the product to market, validate product market fit, and then go out and raise even more money. I think the role for very early stage angels or VC has changed as a result. So what we're seeing now as a trend is founders can go to market, prove product market fit without going through either the early stage financing at all or raising as much and suffering dilution that early. And I think that's definitely affecting the relationships at the early stage. To be frank, I think it makes it easier for everyone because no one wants to be very early money. People want to see product market fit, and people want to see founders take on more of that risk and go to market as early as possible. And so we're seeing MVPs roll out earlier and more robustly for less money. That's the first trend I'm seeing. And then related to that is this idea that founders are becoming more savvy about what kind of capital to go after at what timeline in their growth. The other trend that I'm seeing is the sort of race for the new sweepstakes, if you will, right? Sweepstakes was sort of a big, huge story. It's not over yet, but it was a huge story over the last 4 or 5 years. And, with the success of VGW and Chump Casino and similar companies in the space, try to, fire up people's imaginations as to what's possible. And so we're seeing a lot of these, alternative game types come up. Predictions markets is a notable one. Mist boxes is another one. One thing I will say is that, it's very easy to jump on bandwagon for these emerging game types, but the more institutional capital, the bigger checks are the more patient the capital, and they're thinking long-term. They're not thinking for a short win. They're thinking for a really long return, long exit. And so when we're talking to founders, certainly we're helping them build a business, but we are having conversations like that. The conversation being, if the regulatory landscape shifts, as we saw with sweeps, what's your deep blue sky? Where are you taking this? Where are you taking things from here?
And along a similar vein, Ron, look, you, again, talk to a lot of founders that are trying to find their way within the space. I would assume you have a lot of the same conversations over again, trying to, counsel them to some extent, share some insights you have based on all the work you've done. If you were to generalize all of that advice you have given, what are, maybe 2 or 3 of the top level pieces of sort of generic guidance you share with people that approach you that you can share with the broader audience here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the first bit of advice is, I wouldn't say it's specific to gaming and betting. It's don't overdilute yourself, out of the gate. And so there's a maxim in finance. It's very simple advice. When someone offers you money, you take it. But, I would check that. I'd say, really, if the money's too expensive, but, by way of, equity dilution, you shouldn't take it, especially in like what I just said about it being easier and faster to go to market with an MVP, given all of these coding tools and, vibe coding and what have you. The more you de-risk the proposition, the more likely you're going to raise at a less dilutive term sheet. So, that's the first thing, is that, just be patient, put in the sweat equity, put in the hard work so that you can raise on less dilutive terms. The second bit is be careful as to who you surround yourself with on your cap table. More often than not, our clients are looking to enter the regulated space, and you have to make sure that your shareholders can pass regulatory scrutiny. And so just ask some basic questions. One of the things that we recommend our founders do is don't pull a Y Combinator safe off the internet, or, don't ask ChatGPT to create a subscription agreement for you. You're going to get something that's very vanilla. Instead, you have to be mindful that you're in the gaming and betting industry. This is very highly regulated industry. That's part of the value, is the regulatory mode, and your financing documents should reflect that. And so what we do in our financing documents is we make sure that the founders maintain security and control over the regulatory requirements that investors might have to go through, right? So in particular, making sure that you've got reps and guarantees that the investor can pass regulatory scrutiny, that they don't have a criminal record, that if they do get into trouble in the future, that there are some mechanisms that the company has to avoid any issues that may result from that reputational fallout, or from a criminal record in the future, et cetera. And those are just some small examples. The other bit of advice we give, is that long-term thinking, that if you want to go after big capital is patient capital. And you have to have something more than a 2 to 3 year plan, especially if you're coming to market with, an alternative game mechanic or some sort of, fringe game or what have you. And so, to plan accordingly. And then, part of that planning advice is put yourself in the shoes of the investor. They're going to want to see a data room. What are the things that you're going to want to look at if your money's on the line, right? So make sure that you're organized and prepared. And that's a lot of the work that we do, is we make sure you're investable from a data room perspective. You have to put that work in ahead of time. You can't expect people to just sign a check because they think you have a cool idea. They're also going to be worried about risk, not just about the opportunity.
All right, a lot of practical and actionable advice in there, Ron. Probably thousands of dollars worth of advice and value you just gave for free to the audience. So thank you for that. Look, we're all going to be in New York in a few short days. When you get there, when you get to the next New York City Summit, what's exciting to you about your time in New York? Who are you looking forward to meeting, and what's on the agenda for you as a focus for at the show?
Well, number one, the Starties, which is going to, be great. Last year was amazing. I've never, in all sincerity, been to a sort of a founder event like that. High energy, great people in the room, both founders and investors. I'm based on the west coast of Canada. I hate to go off topic here, but we don't have a Shake Shack out here, and I know that they have in New York, so I'm definitely going to be hitting that and putting on some pounds. But, I know that the Starties and betting startups is closely affiliated with the team from Next, and going out to Next New York, it's my favorite show on the calendar. It's fantastic. It's one of these shows where you don't really have to book any meetings. You just stand in one spot and all the opportunities pass you by, and you have these great organic conversations that realize those opportunities. So just looking forward to being there.
Likewise, and I look forward to seeing you soon, Ron. And again, thank you to you and your team for your support of the Starties Networking Party. There are still some tickets available. They're not going to last long. So if you're watching this, have a look in the link below. Snap yours up now. Don't fall victim to FOMO. And we'll see you soon, Ron. Safe travels to New York, my friend.
Thank you. Same to you.